what is the nature of destruction, of what people call evil, or the dark side, the shadow side? What is behind it?
What do you mean, what is behind it?
What is the operating system behind that? How does it work?
Behind evil?
Behind evil, yes.
What we're teaching is the conceptual truth of the reality of life is that we are living in a movie. You have to develop the watcher, the part of you that can look at the movie, that can actually look at the whole movie and can stand out and say, oh, I'm watching a movie. I'm watching a movie.
I exist to break your hand. I break your suffering. It's just a simulation. It's just a simulation. You can do anything you want to. Wow. Anything you want to be, you're free. Don't you know that it's right there? It's right in you. Don't you see?
I can't fight. I can't fight whatever my destiny is. No matter what it is, I can't fight it. Just like Diane said, if it's your time, it's your time. That's just the way that it is. I don't know what my time is, but I have to just accept that really deeply.
What is it calling us to do? What is she calling us to do? What is she calling us to know? Is she calling us to grow?
I think it's happening on a level now with a lot more, there's a lot more alchemists who don't know they're alchemists out there. And I think that's part of what my job is to help awaken the alchemists who are the butterflies.
Right.
It's a new consciousness that we're part of that we're all stepping into. But in order to step into it, it's a new way of being. And it's the mind ego thing has created all that we have now. It's the expansion, it's the patriarchy, this whole thing that we've developed. We had to go through this phase of evolution to create what we have. But
civilization.
We're at the end of that. We're stepping into something entirely new.
Maybe it is that huge. We're things that are like really foundational.
Yeah.
Giant things.
But all that stuff will develop as humanity steps out of the mind ego way and is able to become the watcher of the whole experience and be a perfect light channel of your own particular recipe of life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your own perfect recipe, so that because it's there to it's there to serve the greater evolution of the species.
Mm-hmm.
Hi there. Welcome to Shadow Tech Alchemy. Welcome to the Solutio podcast. I'm Colin Davis, and it is August 25th, 2026. And here we are. So you are watching the trailer for my film, Melissa Mari, Musical Alchemist of Stage and Psyche. And you can get all the information on that at melissamarimovie.com. And the main website is shadowtechalchemy.com, solutiopodcast.com. You can also go to melissamarimusic.com. Those are all the main websites for what we're doing here. And so here we are, and we're always what we're always doing here, we're always talking about Jungian psychology. We're always talking about shadow work, so-called living in the movie, a term Melissa and I coined. And today we'll be talking about that within the framework of what I'm calling the sacred life artist. And I've talked about this recently because I have a paper out which you can get on the main website. You go to shadowtechalchemy.com and go to the papers page. And there's a paper on the shaman and the sacred life artist there. So I encourage you to download that. Now, so there we are. And I think I'm just gonna kind of riff on that and kind of try to tune into that, what that is. What is it to live as a sacred life artist? What is it to live in the movie of life? What is it to have this spiritual artist consciousness and to live through this and to dedicate your life to this? What does that? How does that feel? How does that translate? Who are the people that do that? Why do we do that? So that's what we're going to kind of tune into today. And I've got some notes here, and so we'll hit on those because it's been, I don't even know how long we're going to go tonight because this week, these last couple weeks, I've been very busy, and I've been talking lately about this Casa de Luz village in Austin, and this new conversation lounge, we could say, called the Singularity Thought House. And it was created and implemented by the man who is the curator of the Casa de Luz village, an amazing man who built this for us, for the community. And basically, it's a place where people can get together and talk about the kinds of things that we talk about here. Really anything that's deep, that has to do with philosophy, spirituality, metaphysics, psychology, anything that's really deep. This is a place where local people can go to have discussions about those subjects and to support each other. So So that Casa de los Village has been there it's been developing, but for 40 years. And he only put this thought house into place in April of this year. So it's only been 4 or 5 months. And it's been going through some rapid evolution. And so I started being part of that community a few months ago, and now I've been spending a lot of time over there volunteering and helping him to get that thing up and running. And so that's been plus everything else that I'm doing, that's been taking a lot of time. And it's the same category of life art as what we do here on this program, what Melissa and I did for the 12 years we were together. And it's all in the same category, but it's actual local community based, right? Because a lot of me and Melissa's work was the alchemical relationship. So it was really mainly about us. And we had outreach, we had friends, and we had a band together, and so we did do things in the public. But most of everything was concentrated within the container of relationship, two artists, two alchemists working together. And then I'm writing books, and I'm giving podcasts or lectures or whatever online, or I'm on social media or whatever it is, but none of that is community outreach. None of that is working with people in the public. And really that's what it comes down to. It's like the first level of psychospiritual development is yourself, is working on yourself. It's doing it alone. And then, but immediately after that, it's in the relationship. And so you may be applying what you're learning yourself to your relationships with other people who may not really even be on the path. But you're taking what you learned and you're applying it. You're applying more self-awareness to your relationships, to the conflicts, to your patterns, your suffering, your environment, your community. However you interface with the world, you're doing it in a more self-aware way, and you're consciously recognizing that the way you interact with the world is part of your inner development. But that itself isn't exactly the alchemical relationship. The next level up is when you say, "Oh, okay, I'm with somebody and we're going to do this interdevelopmental work together. We're going to use each other as mirrors." And naturally people project onto each other. So there's always the intersubjective field, right? Or the transference, as it's called in psychology. That's always going on. Projection, as it's called. So your men and women are projecting anima and animus onto each other, and they're projecting mother and father and all kinds of stuff onto each other. And so you're aware of that projection. You're aware of what's going on in that field. They project their shadow material onto each other. And so you're aware of this, and then you're working with that material in the relationship. So it's very potent. When you're alone, yeah, you're working on your material, but there isn't that immediate bounce back that you get in relationship. And even working, and when you're doing it in the public, if you're doing it at work or you're doing it with family, those people generally are not on the path. So they can't really serve as the same kind of mirror. They're definitely a mirror. But when you have another person that you're in relationship with, another self-aware mirror, then that's the alchemical relationship. And so that's another level of the work. And then what happens when you do go into community and you have people in your community, in your locality, in your space that are also self-aware. What do you, how now you've got something new there. Because that's, I mean, really, this is all very rare. There's very few people who really work on themselves deeply. And there's even fewer people who do it in the container of the relationship. And there's even fewer people who do it within a group. So that's what's possible at this location, at this Casa de Luz, at this thought house. That's what's possible here. And that's what we're already building, and that's already happening, and that just showed up. That just showed up in my life. Like everything that's transformational, everything that's evolutionary, it just showed up. Melissa and I both had all kinds of thoughts and dreams and projections and fantasies about how this kind of thing would manifest in the outer world. But we had no way to know that this would be something that Melissa would pass away and that I would go through this whole process and make movies about her and then go find this local community. The way it transpired, there was no way for us to know. So I'm just taking this as a massive gift, and I'm just doing everything I can over there to help facilitate the birthing of that space. And the curator, he's been very open to this, to all of my input, and so it's been just tremendous, But so my focus has really been on that, and not as much on preparing for this show, and not as much on being on and I was never really on social media that much, but or not as much on writing. I was in a place where, like, for several months I was writing a bunch of papers. And I want to give you another update before we kind of talk about the Sacred Life Artist more. So some people know that I made this movie, and it's being shopped in film festivals right now, and I'll just put it online after the end of this year. But it's going well, and then I've already I thought I was going to write a book called My Alchemical Relationship with Melissa Mari. And but it wasn't coming out because I wasn't really fully tuned in to all the details, because the beginning of our relationship was 14 years ago or something, and close to that. So there's a lot of details and a lot of depth that's kind of in the background, but I didn't have enough emotional access to. So I started going. I mean, I when I made the movie, I put together all that footage, and so that got me very close to Melissa and close to our path. But that movie was not just about our spiritual path. It was about a bunch of other things. And so now I'm writing this book about our spiritual path, and I'm like, okay, I need to get more in touch with this material again. So I went back and I collected up all the backups of my little audio recorder, this little Olympus audio recorder that I carried around everywhere and recorded all kinds of conversations between us. And I've got 50 or 60 backup folders of that thing. And it held up to 17 hours in it. So I've got 600-700 hours of material, and I'd say probably a few hundred hours of that is good stuff. So now what I'm doing is I'm going through this material, and the first step is I'm transcribing it all. I'm running it through AI programs, and it's the way I've been able to do this. Is pretty cool and pretty sophisticated. I'm using AI programs to help me write scripts that control other AI programs. It's pretty amazing. And then I transcribe these audio files. So all these conversations get turned into text files. And then I use AI again to turn the text files into summaries. And then I can go through this material and I can look and see what were, without having to listen to all of it. I can go look and see, okay, where were we here? Where were we here? What were we talking about? And then the material that I want to really listen to again, then I just refer to that file name and I go pull that up. And so then the next step after that is to take the good stuff and bring it into an audio editor and clean it up, cut it up, and create audio presentations out of our conversations and out of my monologues and all of this. And then overlay it with our music and other atmospheric audio or sounds and create a whole landscape, a whole soundscape based on our conversations. And so what you're going to get to do once this is out, you're going to get to, I don't know how many episodes of this there's going to be, but 20, 30, 40, probably 20 or 30 or something of like an hour or 90 minutes long. It'll be like audio books kind of. And then I'll just I'll be putting that out. I'm gonna make a few of the episodes first without releasing any of it, just so I know I'm on a roll and everything's working, and I don't need to change anything. And then I'm gonna put that out. And I think I'm now recalling, I might have talked about that last week. So that is what I'm in the process of doing, and you're gonna be able to get to hear what two psychospiritual alchemists, artists, life artists were doing and how they talked and their different phases and their processes and their shadow work sessions and all of that. You're going to get to hear that material and get to know what it's like when people do this, because there's very few people, if there's almost, in fact, I can find no one's ever done what I'm talking about doing. Nobody has recorded 12 years of their life and all their inner alchemy and their ups and downs and everything, and then made some kind of a presentation out of it. No one's done that. People have written books. People have written blog posts. But the people who are really on the Jungian path, they don't even really tell you that much details, because they don't want the dirty stuff to get in there and mess with their reputation and all of that. Or we don't care about that. We don't care about that. So that's going to come out sometime, and I'm just going to keep rolling out new episodes, and that's just going to be tremendous. And all of this, there's other movies about Melissa that are coming out too, and there's this whole audio series. There's a live streaming Mari TV where you're going to get to watch all kinds of presentations and videos and music videos and music performances and everything of Melissa. I'm going to have that just streaming on this channel. So all this is coming. This is all inside the Mari Trust. And so that's my job right now. So it's been 19 months since Melissa passed, almost 20 months. And so I already made the movie, and now I'm starting on this next project. And so within a few years, I'll probably have, a good chunk of all this stuff done. And, I don't know where my life's going to go from there. It's already moving quickly into other directions, but I'm staying on this. I'll be doing this kind of stuff for the rest of my life in some way, but this original chunk of material is going to get done now. So that's what's going on with me, and now I can kind of go into this idea of the life artist, the sacred life artist. And would be nice to would like to donate. You would like to donate? Yeah. You can just send me an email. We'll talk. And I can just easily send you my PayPal if you want to do that, or if you want to send me something else, who knows, however you want to do it. I would gladly accept that. If you ever wanted to donate to the Thought House, that would be cool too. But I think the Thought House is kind of more for people who are in Austin who are actually using it. But yeah, absolutely. I will. Right at some point, that Mari Trust will actually be like a nonprofit, and people can donate with as a tax. I don't know if that'll actually. To tell you the truth, it'll be it's a private trust, but actually I don't know if I actually will turn it into a 501c3 or something. Maybe in the future that'll happen, but I think I'm probably just going to keep it out of that whole thing. Okay, so the Sacred Life Artist. Again, it's a paper on the main website. Go to the papers page, download The Shaman and the Sacred Life Artist. Well, what this is really starts with, you know, this understanding, this metaphysical, psychological, psychospiritual understanding or realization that people get when they have these non-dual experiences, or when they have these psychedelic experiences, these transcendent experiences. They realize that this is not the ultimate reality that we're in here. This is some kind of projection, some kind of simulation, some kind of movie, some kind of play, some kind of structure that's not the actual real thing. And then you come back to this state. You come back to your normal waking consciousness, and you only can, you know, you can hold on to some of that, and you're like, you know, something is held on to, but this is another dimension entirely. But this is the dimension in which society is happening and family is happening, and we're having jobs and we're driving cars and all of the things, and we're watching podcasts. This is all happening through this particular biopsychosocial movie. And because we're all 99.99% the same biologically, we're all basically able to run the same biopsychosocial scripting. And so that scripting, that, you know, that consciousness that it has neuronal properties, and it has hormonal properties, and all of the different physical properties, and everything that is included in that consciousness, that's our collective movie. And when you leave this movie and go into some other alternate version, some tweaked version, when you change the channel and you're watching another channel for a while, and then you come back and you go, whoa, okay, I was on another channel. You know, you realize that there's multiple channels. And you realize that this reality is malleable, is somehow subjectively determined, and that it isn't as solid and real as we might have previously thought. So this kind of mystic experience is universal, ubiquitous and universal, and people have been having those experiences for as long as humans have been around. And so there's always been philosophy, there's always been metaphysics, which tries to understand that, explain that. Plato's analogy of the cave, you know, that's a Western one. Or the Hindu understanding of Maya, you know, that's an Eastern one. Or the Australian Aboriginals understanding of dream time, you know, that's an indigenous one. So there's all kinds of different versions of this understanding. So we also have this in the Jungian world. And so when you tune into this, when you accept this state of affairs, and you say, okay, so this reality I'm in is malleable, it's not solid, it can be changed maybe, it's certainly much more mysterious than what you think. And now what can we do with this? What can we do with this, and where can I go with this? What can I do with this? Where can I go with this? Now that I know that this is the case, what can I do? Can I heal myself? Can I do magic tricks? Can I change the trajectory of my life? Can I substitute some of my fate for my destiny? What can I do knowing that this is the case? And so then everybody that goes on this path, on this journey, kind of does their own thing. And one of the, or not one, but if I go into the Hermetic tradition, the Western esoteric psychospiritual tradition, they have this Hermetic maxim, as above, so below. And they have this maxim of all is mind. And so when you recognize that all is mind, everything is in mind, and that even matter is in mind. You can look at Bernardo Kastrup's work for this, or Donald Hoffman's work for something more modern. And so if it's all mind, if it's all simulation, it's all mind at different levels of frequency and density, so to speak, then you can start interacting with the world in a completely different way. So Melissa and I, after we got together, because our whole getting together was extremely numinous and extremely metaphysically and spiritually powerful, and we started downloading and having all these experiences of gnosis. And at some point we looked at each other and we said, man, it's like there's been so many synchronicities. There's been so many synchronicities, so much inner-outer relationship. Things will be going on inside ourselves or inside our relationship, and then we'll see them mirrored outside, as above, so below. Or things will be going on outside, and then we'll find the correlation inside. And we're like, man, there's just so much synchronicity and so much of this inner-outer play going on that it was like out of a movie that we looked at each other on the way back from Mount Shasta, and we said, holy cow, it's like we're living in a movie. And so that became our phrase, living in the movie. And then we slowly developed this over a period of a couple years. And this was something that, like I said, it goes back to this ancient metaphysical realization. And it's something that Melissa was probably pondering maybe more than I was from many years ago. I've got songs from her when she was in her 20s writing about this stuff. So I think I was, I had done psychedelics and stuff, and so I already was tapped into this, but I think Melissa was even more tapped into it than I was, even more on the kind of mystic perception. She was more viewing that way than I was. And so we really went into this, and we developed this metaphor, this concept called living in the movie. And the idea is that the average person is just watching the movie of life. They're just in the theater, stuck to their seats, and they're just accepting that outer reality is what it is. You can't change it. You're just on the receiving end of it, like a moviegoer. A moviegoer is just on the receiving end of the projection. Right? And so they don't have any input into it, and they don't even really ask questions about it. They just let it run them. They just let the movie take them over, and they just go up and down emotionally with the movie, and it takes them for a ride. And that's the experience of life that 99.9% of the public has. But the person who's going to film school, so to speak, the person who's becoming a co-director of the movie of life, that person recognizes, hey, wait a minute, this is a projection. Reality isn't the screen. The reality is much bigger than the screen. Yes, the screen is part of reality, but it's not the whole thing. So the person who's becoming a co-director, that person recognizes there's a projection going on. There's a projector room, there's a projector beam, and they go investigate that and they say, wow, how does this work? How is the projection working? What's making the projector work? What's playing in the projector? Where did that come from? Can I do anything about it? Can I run my own film in that projector? Or am I stuck with the film that came with me? And all that kind of stuff comes up. So that's when you start to become the co-director. That's when you start to become you become symbolically and psychologically literate, right? So now you start to develop tools for being able to work with the movie of life. So in this movie analogy, the projector is your body. The projector is your body. It's your whole apparatus. It's your brain. It's your neurochemical networks. It's your endorphins. It's your hormones. It's your whole system. That's the body that actually creates the projection. And then the film that encodes the script, that encodes the actual images and content, that's the contents of the psyche. And like in film, when you develop film, what you develop on the film is called emulsion, which just sounds like emotion. But it's more than just emotion. It's all your beliefs, and it's all of the built-in scripts of your culture and your family that came with you that you didn't question until now. And so all that stuff is running. And some of it comes from your own experience, some of that scripting. Some of that comes from your family, some of it comes from your culture, some of it comes passed genetically and epigenetically. And there's all these layers, and it goes all the way back. The most primal scripting goes all the way back to single-celled organisms and before. So a lot of this scripting is so deep, is so entrenched, is so built in that you're not going to change that, not in a human form. But there is enough of this that you can change, or that if you can't change it foundationally, you can improvise with what you're given. And this was something that was shown to me after Melissa died. Because when we were doing this inner development so seriously that when we got to a place to where we couldn't change the script, then it became obvious to me after the fact that I was able to look back and I was able to say, okay, here's what we did do and here's what we couldn't do. And it was very humbling. And so, you know, this is an important realization. This is an important realization because it's very easy to kind of go into New Age world and everything and think that, well, I can just, you know, change my beliefs somehow and then I can change everything in my life. You can't. A lot of the foundational scripting, the archetypal scripting, is going to be there. And in the movie analogy, it's like the genre of movie that's playing through you. or the archetypes of the myth that are running you are going to be there, right? So living in the movie, another way to look at it is that it's a personal myth. It's another analogy, metaphor that you can use. It's a personal myth. And the archetypes that are presenting themselves, once you could, well, whether you can see them or not, the archetypes that are presenting themselves and running you, so to speak, those are going to be part of your scripting. And what they do and how much they are able to influence you and everything is going to be partially up to what you can pull off and what you end up doing. And your awareness of these patterns, your awareness of these archetypes is the very first step. Just becoming aware with symbolic and psychological literacy and going, oh, okay, I see what those patterns are. I see how those patterns are archetypal. They relate to these myths. They relate to these cultural genres, so to speak. And then you're like, okay, then you can frame those, but then you can play within that. That we at least have the power to improvise, to play, and to tweak the movie, for sure. That is absolutely true. There is some amount of free will. But trying to, the best thing to do with this is to make life art out of it, out of what you were given, right? There was a guy, I don't know his name, maybe you guys know him, is a guy who is just completely dedicated. He's a millionaire, a billionaire. I think he's a billionaire or something, like a tech guy or something, completely dedicated to figuring out how to live forever or how to live for hundreds of years using the latest nutrition and technology and all of this. And he was, bragging about it, and he was out there and writing books and doing lectures and stuff. And then he suddenly develops some rare disease that takes him over and he can't cure it. Right? So you can't control what's running you. Now that's part of his movie, that's part of his hero's journey. And so now he has to work with that. Now that's a dragon that he has to face now. And what is he going to do with that? And how he faces that dragon, and whether or not he can grasp that gold in the dragon's mouth or that treasure that the dragon's holding, we'll watch. He'll watch and find out. But so some of this scripting is you're just going to go for this ride. And so what we want to do is we want to wake up to the ride. We want to wake up to the script, wake up to the movie, wake up to the dream. The dream is another one, the lucid dream. We want to be lucid in the dream, awaken in the dream. That's Paul Levy, right? So we want to be lucid in the dream, awaken in the dream, play with it, make life art out of it. Instead of trying to control it and make your movie into another movie, accept the movie that's playing and make it the absolute best movie it can be. Get involved in the process so that it doesn't just run on autopilot. Make it an amazing piece of life art, Melissa used to say. Make your life an amazing piece of art. And so that's what you're doing. You're waking up to it, you're getting up and out of it, and you're developing psychological and symbolic literacy, and you're working with it like a great film director or great novelist works with archetypes and works with symbols, works with these cultural and psychic energies, right? So you become an artist with yourself and with your inner state and with everything that's going on in your life, with your relationships and everything. A spiritual artist. And this is what I'm calling the sacred life artist. because Melissa coined the term life artist, and then she used to point at different people and say, yeah, that's a life artist, that's a life artist. And I'd say, but that's a different kind of person. And how do you separate these different types of life artists? And she would go, she was running off of intuition on this, and I really tried to figure it out. But it isn't till more recently before I was able to really kind of go, oh, okay, I kind of see the spectrum. There are most people in our society are dissociated from the archetype of the artist. They don't really, it's their own art is in the shadow. The way of perceiving as an artist and being an artist is in the shadow or is tuned out. And people are like, people just generally dismiss artists. And so it's a deprecated archetype or role in our society, especially in America. And but there are people, there are people who are artists, and they make movies, or they make music, or they write books, or they are sculptors, or they're creative gardeners, or whatever. They're making something. They're making some kind of art. They're making stained glass. They're making custom shoes and clothing and hairdressers and all kinds of ways of being an artist. But then there are people who use that artistic mindset onto everything that they do. And if you watch those people, if you find those people, you'll see that they make art out of everything in their life. They're life artists. This guy Wyo that runs this Casa de Luz, this guy's a total life artist. Total, and a spiritual life artist. This guy is a sacred life artist. And then, so you have the basic artist, who may even be secular, some kind of a secular artist, but they're just being creative. Then you have the person who's applying it to their whole life, whether they realize it's spiritual or not. And then as you go across the spectrum, as soon as you go across the spectrum, then you get more and more towards the spiritual orientation. And when you get to the far end of this, you're a shaman, right? So the far end of this, the sacred life artist is doing all of this as a shamanic function, consciously. So they're consciously viewing life this way, interacting with the world this way, turning their life into conscious, psycho-spiritual, symbolic art, interpreting the world through this lens, and then putting something into the world with this consciousness to wake other people up. That's what Melissa was doing, and that's what we were doing together. So it's a whole spectrum of this, from the secular and the specialized, or let's say the banal artist, if we want to put it that way, all the way over to the sacred life artist, who is basically performing a shamanic function. So that's what that is. That's what the sacred life artist is. That's what living in the movie is. And that's what the deepest Jungians are doing. Yes, the deepest Jungians are doing this. This is what, Carl Jung is kind of, he's the example of doing this, but not everything that pertained to this path and way is on the top or as well known in his work. So you have to take the whole of his work to be able to see where this is. Because the more public stuff was the more scientific. Now you also, this butts up right against, because this is a function of the shaman, and the shaman is a multi-specialist. The shaman is a healer, a doctor, a priest, a storyteller, an artist, an initiator, all of these things. And so when you go to this sacred life artist, this far end of this, you run up against the alchemist, up against the self-healer, and the one who's the psychopomp who's bridging worlds, so to speak. And so Melissa and I, we always identified as artist alchemists. And when you look at the alchemist, you'll also see that the artist is a big chunk of the alchemist. And you'll see that the alchemist is a later version of the shaman. And so it's all, there's no way to just map it all out and say exactly here's where everything is. But we're walking on the same territory here. So that's what we're talking about. And so I think, looks like some of you guys came in a little later, and that's fine actually, because in the beginning I was really just giving you updates as to what I'm doing here. And I think most of the people that are in here now heard what I was saying about the sacred life artist and living life art and living in the movie and all of that. So that's good. Let me respond to your comments real quick. Yeah, the sacred life artist, right? The two not mutually exclusive. The sacred life artist or the sacred life artist. Yeah, let's think about that. The sacred life artist, right? Okay, it's an artist who is making art that portrays sacred life. Yeah, that's right. You could have that. And then you have the sacred life artist. This is the sacred life artist. And life artist is a term that, probably Melissa was not the only person that ever used that term, but she's the only person I ever used that term, and she defined it. And we just called it, while she was alive, we just called it the spiritual life artist. But then I started calling it the sacred life artist. I answered your question indirectly. Okay, great. Let's see. Hi, Dana. Hi there. Eric Neumann wrote about how the artist can open up to ultimate reality of self and nature in the place of creation by being a direct subjective reflection of the evolutionary creative force. Right. I understand that completely. And I love Neumann. So, yeah, and this is where you get into the artist as shaman, right? The artist as psychopomp, is the artist as alchemist, the artist as mystic, the spiritual artist. And this has always been part of the archetype of the artist, or the role of the artist. This was always there, and art was always used as a way to communicate the ineffable, to communicate the transcendent, that which is beyond normal waking consciousness, to other people, and to tune other people into the source behind the projection, so to speak. So that was always there, but different societies have different profiles, different cultures have different profiles, and so the artist takes up a different, their role shifts a little bit from and right now we're in this modern Western world that isn't that is increasingly secular, and even the religious part of it is very disconnected from the core of its spirituality. So artists have become more banal, have become more flat. And it was, I thank Melissa, because she's the one that really, I was a musician my whole life, and I was always an artist, but I didn't fully understand. I had read books about artists too, but I didn't fully understand really in a visceral way what the artist is and what the artist does. The sacred artist, the spiritual artist, before we even get to the life artist, just the spiritual artist. But by listening to her, by watching her, by just being around her and looking at how she thought and how she created and how she led her life and how she talked and her whole philosophy and everything, and by imbibing this over a period of years, I was finally able to just totally tune in to what the archetypal artist, the essential artist, really is about. And our society has no freaking idea. There are plenty of these super deep spiritual artists. They're not the majority, but there are plenty of them around, but they don't really, give lessons on this. And there's a lot of artists who are doing this unconsciously, right? There's a lot of very deep artists that are just very unconscious of it. It's just coming out of them naturally. They don't need to understand it or explain it. They're just living it. And so we have to just look at them and just watch them. And, these are the David Bowies and the Princes and these kinds of people, these artistes, the David Lynches and Sting and all these kinds of people. I mean, I'm mentioning musicians there, David Lynch's or Stanley Kubrick, However, these people who are able to understand what they're doing and could, if they wanted to, explain it. But so now I'm like, I'm tuned into what this is. And now I'm like, yeah, this is me. This is totally me. This is totally my path. And I'll tell you a story in a sec about, I got some more material here, and I could tell you a story about talking to my mom and stepdad about this yesterday, actually. But let's see what Dana's saying. You've been missing being able to be here every week. Oh yeah, well, I think you're right. You weren't here for a couple weeks, were you? But I've been playing guitar and singing a lot more, and painting too. That's great. Exactly. That's how Source has led me to live my life art. Thanks in part to you. Well, you're very welcome. You're very welcome, Dana. And this is part of my job, my path. And it was, and I'm continuing on what Melissa did. And Melissa would find these artists and these life artists, and she would say, you're a life artist, and she would point it out to them and mirror them and say, you keep doing what you're doing. And so now I'm continuing doing that. And since I'm so kind of such a magician, that I'm going to try to map it out and try to put some kind of map. You can't really map it, but put some kind of map onto it so that I can explain it and kind of contextualize it and put it into some kind of cognitive structure. That's kind of what I do. But yeah, so that's it. And how's it going, Theo? How you doing? You like that? You like that talk about the artists, life artists? Yeah, let me give you a little story now. I got a few things to show you, but so okay, here it is. I go to my mom's. I'm in Austin now. Melissa and I were in San Francisco Bay Area for all those years, but I'm in Austin, and I go to see my aging parents. Well, my dad is here in Austin, but then I go see my mom and stepdad, and they're in their 80s, so they need a little help with keeping track of financial things and legal things, and I clean up the house and do stuff like that. I do that once a week. And the funny thing, this is so funny, a lot of people will understand this. Both of my parents were artists. Both of my parents were drama majors. And both of my parents were actors and wanted to act. And my dad was in TV shows and a couple movies, and probably more than a couple actually. And my mom was on theater stages, and they lived in New York City for years and pursuing acting. And so that's art. And my dad was also into directing and studying great directors and stuff like that. So they come from this place. And on my mom's side, her father and his whole family were professional. All the boys, let's say, on her father's side were all professional musicians or music teachers. And then there's also artists on her mother's side. So I took after her father, and he was a touring jazz musician and band manager, and so that's what I became. Different kind of music, but that's what I did. And so my parents were already artists, but they kind of, had to do the matrix thing, raise kids and all of that. And this is so common that you can't afford to, you either make it work with your art financially, you make it, like, for example, my mom's boyfriend, after my parents divorced, my mom's boyfriend was in a band, a Marxist theater band, with Bruce Willis, the famous actor. And he was just a starving artist in New York City, and he showed up for that audition for a TV show, Moonlighting it was called, and he got the part, and that became a very big, famous TV show in the 80s. And then he started doing these action films, and he's one of the most well-known, successful Hollywood actors. And so right next to my parents are people who are becoming successful. There's another guy that we know, who was a good friend of theirs, who would just love being in plays, and he was always in plays and stuff, but he made a living by basically being a theater janitor. Ed Cannon. He was just nothing wrong with that. And that's how he paid the bills. And so he could always be in the theaters, and he was acting, and it was just in the scene, that's what he did. And but he never took off and was able to become famous and successful, so to speak, doing that. Well, that's most artists. And so only some artists are willing to do what Ed Cannon did. And he stayed in it to the end. And he said, I don't care if I have to work as a janitor. I'm not leaving theater. And so he just stayed in theater no matter what. And he just stayed in the environment where he had to be in just for the love of it, just because he had to do it. And other people, most other artists who start out in their 20s doing this, then they just they have children is the biggest challenge. And then they got bills to pay and all of this. And then they just join the modern world. And then their art goes to the background or disappears entirely. And maybe in their 50s, after their children get out of the house or something, maybe they try to tune back into their art in some other way. So this is what my parents did, right? So they did that for a while, for 10 years or something like that, more than that, and then they tuned out of that. And then, they never really could, me and my brother are both artists. My brother is more of he's in advertising, and so he uses his artistic skills to help people sell their products and their services. And I'm more of an artiste where I'm like creating worlds of art. And so, but my parents could never look at us and say, don't be artists, don't do that, because that just would be so hypocritical. But at the same time, they're thinking to themselves, how are these guys going to make it work? Well, my brother went to college and got a degree in advertising and worked for some big ad companies in New York City and started some businesses and stayed like in the, tried to be on the professional side of things. I mean, he literally is. He's a professional and in the industry and stuff. And I never did that. I became a musician, and I just, I just did all kinds of creative things to kind of live a little bit on the edge so that I didn't have to join the matrix, so to speak. And then I just was always writing music and touring and recording, and I was recording other bands, and I lived a very artist, outsider, edge dweller kind of life. And it's hard, but it's very, very satisfying on the inside. And when I was living in California for 30 years and my parents were in Texas, New York or Texas, they were far enough from me to where they couldn't really see what I was doing. They would see when I was on tour or when a new album would come out, and they'd be like, oh, that's cool. But they weren't close enough to really see and to really worry about me. But the more I would tell, especially my mother, about my lifestyle and how I lived and what I was doing and what my values were, and especially after I moved back to Texas, she just gets so worried. It's so common that moms just get so worried about their children becoming artists. Oh, you don't want to do that. That's a hard life. You're going to be poor. You can't raise a family that way. That's don't do that. So people are talked out of that, especially in this country. So I wasn't talked out of it, but especially my mom, there was always been worry. How are you going to pay the bills? How is this going to work? When is your next art project going to finally be a real success? I mean, my band is like well known, and I've toured internationally for decades, and it's like I consider my artistry to be a success. But it's not paying, and how are you going to save up for your retirement? Do you have anything in savings? And all this kind of worry stuff. And I'm like, because I've had this conversation with her many times, and I had this conversation with her again last night. And I'm like, well, Mom, I'm 57 years old right now, and I've been living pretty damn good just through being a creative person with wherewithal and with all kinds of different capacities that I have. And I've been pulling it off all these years without any help from you or anybody else. So I'm just going to continue doing that. And she's like, I just doesn't get it. It's like a screen just cognitive dissonance just goes over her eyes. And she's like, I don't see how you could do that. How could you feel okay not having, a retirement plan? And it's like, this is another way of living entirely. And well, no one had savings or retirement plan until like 100 years ago. I mean, people are, your assets are like your family, your homestead, some plot of land where you have a farm or whatever. Your assets are very close to you and tangible and limited usually. And it's you and your relationships and your family that make things work in life. This whole idea that you got to have $1 million, like I see articles that, what does it take to retire in 2026? You need $1.5 million to live for 15 years, in America, blah, 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 with whatever standard of living, blah, blah, blah. So, and then there's the artists, right? And we're just doing our thing, and we're just pulling it off one way or another, and we're just completely true to ourselves and to our souls. And some of us are riddled with complexes and fears and all that kind of stuff, and can't get our shit together and need to be on welfare and taken care of by the state or whatever. Some of us are like that, but a lot of us are not. I'm not, and I'm obviously not. And so it's so interesting how dissociated, how alienated from the artist, or for that matter, the alchemist, the sacred life artist, the spiritual seeker, any of these, the shaman, any of these, how alienated and how misunderstood or not understood these roles are, and how people live this way, and what this is all about, and how this is the best stuff. This is way better life than what most people are living in the modern world. And so all those folks that, they do the mainstream deal, they don't have the kind of inner satisfaction that we have. So it's just an amazing thing, and this is what people who are on this path, and then the artists, they doubt themselves. Oh, am I doing the right thing, and how am I going to survive and all of this? And it's like, when you dedicate to this and you just say, no, this is what I do from here till my last day, and especially if you can stop giving a fuck about staying alive so much. People are so caught up in staying alive as long as they can. I want to live to be 90 or 100 or more. Why? What do you care? What you're here to do the ride, whatever your ride is, and then when you're done with your ride, it's time to get off the ride. And I mean, I know that there's existential fear around death and all of that, and it's built into our physiology and stuff. But there's many more layers of this, cultural and familial layers that people put on of this, of, do everything to stay alive. Now, nobody wants to suffer for a decade, with riddled with cancer or whatever. Nobody wants that. But the whole idea that you have to live a long life, 80, 90 years or whatever. Look at Melissa. She lived to be 62. And she had a fuller, more powerful, more spiritually connected, deep, meaningful life than you can imagine, than what any of these people living to be 90 or 100 are doing. So, this whole thing about death and life and all, that's just another trap. But anyway, let me see what you guys are saying. Okay, let's see what you guys have been saying. You have been saying, Dana said, I met a cool metal EDM rock musician online. He has a lot of albums on Spotify, and we talk online. It's really cool. He's not from this country, though. Yeah, that's another thing, is that you're definitely going to find deeper artists who are more in touch with the artist role outside of America, for sure. Whether South America or Europe or I'm not so much sure about Asia, parts of Asia, sure, parts of Asia. Maybe not China right now. Yeah, you kind of got to go outside. That's why I go to Europe so much. It's just, you go to Europe, you go to America, you go to a mainstream public place like a bar or something, and people say, "What do you do?" In other words, what's your job? And I go to Europe and people say, What do you like to do? What do you do for pleasure? What are you all about? Totally different question. One is about your persona and another is about your soul. So yeah, don't get me going on America. Inflation is making the mom worry worse. Oh. Yeah. Are you worrying about inflation? I'm seeing inflation. It's pretty bad. Yeah. The dollar is falling apart. America's in $40 trillion in debt. Inflation is rampant. And, but I cannot worry about that. I just cannot let that, actually my mom's not worried about inflation because her husband has enough wealth for them to not worry about that. But she worries about other things from before she had wealth. So she has she looks at receipts just to see what she spent, but she doesn't think about, oh, things are getting more expensive. It's kind of like certain scripts from early in life are still running, but as things change, the old scripts are the ones that she's still concerned with, not the new scripts. So, but yeah, he has a YouTube account and shares daily music. Yeah, so that's cool. Yeah, there's a lot of life artists, musical life artists that I'm in musician world. I'm in been musician world for 40 years or something. So, I think artists intuit the collapse of all those supposed financial securities and see it as a waste of time. Well, let me ask you, do artists see that, or do other people imply that and then try to throw that on artists because they themselves are sacrificing their own art for security? The whole society is sacrificing their own art and their own soul work for security and for persona scripting and so-called keeping up with the Joneses and all that. So I know the whole culture is doing that, but if the culture wasn't doing that, artists wouldn't do it so much either. They'd be like, oh, okay, this is just... If the culture was more respecting of art, well, first of all, the culture would provide for artists better than they do, because right now it just spits on us. But if the culture was more tuned in to the role and appreciated it more, then it would be easier for artists to live well. But the artist who is the true artist, who is tuned in to their artistry, is going to do it no matter what. This is what we're going to do no matter what. And there's nothing that the culture can say, and there's no fear about paying the bills. You just adapt. If you can't pay $2,000, $3,000 a month over here, well, then you're going to go rent a room over here for $500. If you got to put your business and your work and your home and your business into one place, if you got to ride a bicycle, you're going to ride a bicycle. Whatever you have to, the true artist that is committed to their soul work is not going to let the culture or their mom or anything get them off of that. That's what we do. So, and it feels real good. It's sometimes scary. It's definitely difficult, but the average person who gives up on that, their life is no easier. They're still having divorces, going through bankruptcy, losing people they love. They're getting fired from jobs, getting into accidents. They're still having the same old life of light and dark like anybody else. So it's just, where are you sacrificing? Where is the dark side? Where is the light side? Where do you put these values? And like I was saying before, unfortunately, a lot of artists are turned off, they're dissuaded, and they aren't seen in this culture. And so there's not that many examples of people who sacrifice. I mean, there's plenty of examples, but you got to go look for them. And then you have to fight against the matrix, so to speak, to say, no, I'm not listening to that. I'm doing my own thing. You have to individuate, as Jung called it, become a true individual. You have to throw away the cultural persona scripting and say, no, this is what I do. This is me. And so, and then you have to suffer, but everybody suffers. It's not any different fundamentally than any other kind of life. Dana says, but I still have to work part-time at least, but my job is pretty cool. Well, there you go, right? You still have to work. Everybody still has to work at something, right? Everybody's working, and people who don't work and they were born into wealth and stuff, a lot of them get messed up. So, yeah, that's it. And then as your artistry becomes more and more advanced and more developed, and when you find that your job, so to speak, or whatever is getting in the way of your artistry, well, then you just shift your job a little bit and give your artistry more room. And at some point, you have to maybe figure out how to make your artistry pay. And sometimes you can figure that out, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have to shift things up a little bit. You have to problem solve. Like every other little creature out in the environment, every little squirrel and bird is trying to figure out, how do I bury my nuts in a place where they're not going to get stolen? And how do I survive through the winter? And everybody's thinking that. So we have to do that too. But when we put our art in the absolute front, then, now I can come back now. Now, after this part of the discussion, now we can come back. Now we can come back. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Yeah. Thanks for being here again. Yeah. Now we can come back to the... So we talked about the sacred life artist, its connection to the shaman, and awakening in the movie of life. And I didn't probably talk as much today about using synchronicities as clues, as breadcrumbs for making meaning out of life. Can talk about that now. And discerning the myth of your life, the movie that's running, and consciously participating in it, and tracking and relying upon the movement of energy and information between the outer world and the inner world. Tracking and relying upon the energy and information that crosses the inner and outer world. What Jung called synchronicities. So when you have a hold of that, and you're starting to use that, and then now you're tapped into the field behind the movie, and when you start playing with that stuff, and you start making art, life art, out of the breadcrumbs of synchronicity and gnosis, when you download gnosis, and you start to incorporate that into your life very seriously, right? That's the sacred life artist. And so when you think that you're in trouble, when the artist thinks I can't pay my bills, and the artist is noticing that the outer world is not hospitable, and their art is being rejected and all of this, well, this is your opportunity to be discovering your inner complexes and all your epigenetic scripting, and what kinds of orphan archetypes or other shadow archetypes are running in you. You can make art out of it if you want to. But then playing with that material. So I can give you an example. There's a woman who is involved in the Singularity Thought House that I told you about in the beginning of this talk today, and she's a total sacred life artist, and so she told me a story about how she parked her car in a parking lot, and knowing semi-consciously that was a dangerous place to park, that she could get towed there. And she's just transitioned out of a job, and she's low on funds, like artists, and her car got towed, and it cost her $350 to get it out. And so we talked about this, and there was a lot of things in there. So that when she first parked the car, she did it, and there was a knowing that what she was doing was dangerous, and that she might be surprised with a dark surprise. And it was semi-conscious, and she went about her day and did her thing, and then she goes back to her car a few hours later, and it's gone. It had been towed. And she didn't have the money at that moment. And so she is a very charming and very bright and a very bright, numinous human being. And she texted some people, and she got the money. And she went and bailed her car out. And she was in that environment where the car was, where the tow place was, and all the details about the person that was working there and what the office was like, and the dusty smell, and the person's fat belly that was in there, and they were just like, just a very unhealthy environment. And she looked at the whole thing and she said, what does this mean? What does this all mean? And she wasn't maybe even conscious that she was doing that until I started psychoanalyzing it with her and saying, what does this mean? And then I realized immediately that she had already been asking that question and been deciphering it. And one of the things that we pulled out of this was that she recognized that usually, if something like this were to happen, she would see her car towed and she would have a pit in her stomach. And she would have fear and dread in her body. And, but that this time, that wasn't there. Wow, something is different. Something was different. And so we pulled this thing apart and we started talking about this complex that she has that has been running, that likes to get her into these situations. And then when she gets in these situations, she pulls herself out with psychic powers, psychic and interrelational powers. She feels her power, her talent, her abilities when she has to get out of these situations. And she's very good at doing that. And so we talked about the two sides of the complex, that there's the dark side of the complex, the parasitic side, the side that is addicted to the feelings of fear and dread and shame and all these things. And then there's the side of the complex that's totally evolutionary. And not only that, but the running of the complex gives an opportunity for the ego, the conscious mind, to look down and go, what does this mean? What is going on here? And this is what you do when you walk out of a great movie that was written and directed by great artists. Those scenes, those characters, those story elements mean something. There is deep symbolic meaning embedded into those. Meaning that the artist put in there consciously, and that meaning that the artist just channeled unconsciously. An archetypal meaning, layers of meaning. And so the person with symbolic literacy, the person who's living in the movie, being a sacred life artist, this person is mining these situations for meaning and saying, how does that occurrence out there relate to a pattern that's playing inside me? How did I create that? How did I project that? How did I make that happen unconsciously? What parts of me created that scenario? And so that's what she was analyzing. That's what we were analyzing. And so we went into the question. We pulled it apart. We applied symbolic literacy to it. And then out of that, some gnosis came out of that. Understanding, recognition, integration happened out of that. And then I saw her again a few days later, and we were recalling it again. So we went back into that, and we were pulling it out again. And well, what else can we pull out of that? What else? And there was other things that we pulled out of that. And we took it back into her family and took it back into her life, and we unwrapped it. And we realized that complex is a long time running thing. That occurrence that happened where the car got towed is just not just an accident. That's a psychic occurrence. That's an as above, so below occurrence that has to do with a pattern that's been running, a complex we call it, that's been running all the way back down her family line. And she's the first one to wake up to it. Right? So then I got involved in it, right? So I'm there analyzing it with her, and we're talking about it and everything. And she's just tuned in on this, and she's like, yes, she understands this intuitively, even though she hasn't been studying Jungian psychology, and she intuitively understands these. She's at a period in her life where she's ready for this level of consciousness. And she's already done enough study she knew what the word complex was. She knows what a pain body is. She knows what internal parts are. She knows enough to be able to apply now. And so then she tells me about, because the whole thing is happening because she's low on funds and there's a bunch of stuff going on in her life. So I say to him, I realized I had a $100 bill in my wallet. And I thought to myself, would it be a good idea to give her money? Or is that like kind of a shameful charity thing or something like that? But I realized because of the situation and everything, it was not. It was a positive thing. It was a friendly thing to do. So I gave her $100, and she was thankful. And then, so we left. We walked away, and then the very next day, my stepdad hands me $300. I don't know, for doing some extra work for him or something like that. He doesn't usually do that. I mean, he's a generous guy, but he doesn't usually hand me cash. Just here's $300. It just doesn't usually happen. Usually it's like, yeah, let me give you something for Christmas or something like that. But it's not usually just like that. But I had been having some deep conversations with him and stuff, and for whatever, and it was all in the field. It was all in the field. And so then he handed me $300, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. This is related to what happened last night. I gave her $100. He gave me $300. Now I can give her another $100. So I just keep the play going, right? So I bond with this person. I get inside their the interrelational field. I get in their psychic field. We pull this material up. We imply our symbolic and psychological literacy to it. We pull it out. We see the as above, so below relationship. We analyze it. We integrate it to whatever degree we can. We sleep on it. And then now this whole field has been activated. And the inner-outer field around this complex has been activated. And I came in there as an outsider who is related to her because I have the artist, what's called the money virus, that's in my family and is in all these artist families, like we were talking about with some of you guys earlier. And but I'm at a point to where I'm like, it's not running me anymore. It's still there. It's still doing stuff. It's still trying to do stuff. But I have a lot more separation from it than I ever did. And so, but I'm getting involved in this, and I'm already have a psychic relationship to her through this similarity. And now I'm diving into this psychic, into this spiral, into this field. And then what can I do once I get inside there? What can I do? And so then I give. I act in good faith, and then something comes back, something reciprocates back to me, and then I can give again, and we can just keep going with it and see where it goes. And maybe it'll skip over to something else and do something else, or skip over to another person or do something else. And so we're just playing with it. We're playing with the psyche. We're playing with the relationship between the psyche and the collective psyche and the personal psyche, the relational psyche and the personal psyche, the movie of life, the objective world and the subjective world, the inner and the outer. We're playing with that. We're making art out of that. We're doing things in there. This is where the artist and the alchemist are merging. Right? So this is an example, and I've got a few other examples. I don't know if we'll have time. Let's see what time we have today. But where we are now, I might have a little more time. But this is an example. This is a real world example of how we're doing psycho-spiritual life art. And it's not just about making things that are beautiful or cool or have symbolic meaning, but it's also part of the healing process. Our art, our psycho-spiritual art, is a healing practice. It's a shamanic practice. That's a shamanic practice, what I just described to you. It's alchemical, it's shamanic. Right? And it's not a hard science. People want it to be a hard science. All these magicians want it to be a hard science. It's not a hard science. Alchemy is the spiritual scientific art of transmutation. Right? So it's an art process as much as it is scientific and as much as it is spiritual. So there's an example kind of how being a sacred life artist and making art out of life, and then figuring out, okay, well, what archetype was running? What archetype is behind that complex? Right? How is that archetype presenting itself in all these different scenarios and relationships in life? What does that mean in my movie? So, I got a couple other examples here, and where we're now bridging life art over, into the psychological. And so I have another woman friend, and she was telling me about hanging out with another woman, and they're having conversations, and that she thought that she noticed some body language that indicated that other person might have been angry at her. And this is an old pattern for her. This is a complex. And she recognizes it. But in that moment, that kind of got her. And then, so we're talking about this. And how do we diagnose this situation? Is that lady really mad at me? Am I projecting that? Is that my own overlay? Is it true? Is it half true? Well, how do we deal with that? And so I said, well, what I responded to is I said, well, let's look. I see 3 layers right now. The first layer is you are really accurately picking up that other woman's anger. That's one layer. She has powers. She has the ability to, she's very perceptive. And so she could easily be picking up real shadow material in this other person. So that's real. That's where what you perceive in the movie what your perception is, an accurate reflection of what's out there. There's that layer. Then there's the layer of your projections that are created by your complexes. So your complex gets activated and it puts an overlay, it puts a movie, it puts a screen, it puts a script on top of that other person. And so you think that they're angry, but that's your overlay. That's your complex saying, here you go. This is how you need to see this situation. This is how you need to see and feel the situation. And it puts that overlay on top of your perception. They're not really angry at you, but you think they are. Because that's your complex, that's your overlay. So that's another layer of this. That's always going to be in there too. You're perceiving the world accurately. That's one layer. You're also perceiving the world inaccurately. You're putting your own overlay on top of it. And then there is the layer of how you actually even attracted each other in the first place. That isn't a layer of perception. That's a layer of the relational field. That's the layer of the relational field and how these complexes reach out to each other. We reach out to each other. We're all just, at some point we're going to be able to actually probably with technology see the human psychosocial field and how feelings, thoughts, patterns extend locally and even non-locally. And so then there's that. Why did you even attract that person? Why did you feel attracted to that person? Why did they feel attracted to you? Why are you hanging out? Why is this person coming into your life that you can play this with? What's creating that? So these are all layers that have to be investigated by the person, by the alchemist. We're now bridged out of just artistry and into alchemy. Psychospiritual relational alchemy. And so there's and then we're analyzing it, we're pulling it up, we're doing the same thing we did before. We're putting our psychospiritual skills, we're using our skills, our skill set, we're practicing with it. And in this way, where is the art? Where's the art function of this? Well, this is more on the science side. This is more on the analysis side than it is on the play side. That other example where I gave, there is analysis, and then there's a level of lucidity in the dream. And you're like, okay, if we do stuff, if I give you money, and then money's going to come back to me, and then I can give you more money, and then maybe money will come back, and maybe something, we're going to watch and see what happens. And you're playing with the field. You're playing with this energy. And that's more on artistry and play. This example here, we're more just on analysis. And but play can get involved, obviously, on that one too, if they want to do that, if she or they want to do that. And then I think that was all I had. Is that the other? Playing at the level of the movie script does nothing but keep it going. We have to see how the script is made, how the recipe is made. We need some symbolic and psychological literacy. Yeah, right. That was just something I wrote in my notes. Yeah, so that's all my notes for today. But I think today was good. We talked about, we did. We talked about this, talked about living life art. We talked about living in the movie. We talked about the sacred life artist. We talked about being an alchemist. We talked about applying our psychological knowledge to life, and playing in the being lucid in the dream, playing in the script in the movie. Because I go back to that phrase from Alan Watts, which I've shifted a little bit and paraphrased. So it's like this: you thought life was a game that you were supposed to win or lose, but really it was a play and you were supposed to sing and dance, right? So that's where we bring in the play side and everything, and the artist has a lot of that, should, or at least. Does anybody want to say anything before we tune out for tonight? Yeah, I think that's all I got on here. And I really have to kind of improvise, and there's always a little bit of struggle talking about this subject, because you really have to kind of, it's just what an artist has to do. If you're playing an instrument or if you're painting or something, you can't just fully concentrate right on your hand, and you have to kind of blur your eyes and back off and let the right brain get involved and let the left brain kind of relax a little bit. Or a musician has to improvise, you kind of have to let go. And you kind of, when you improvise, you kind of don't really know what's going to come out, and you kind of have to trust that it's going to come out. And so talking about this subject and talking about life art and living in the movie and all of this really is that kind of artist improvisational kind of mindset. And so I kind of have to play with it and jam with it, and hopefully what I'm saying comes out well enough. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the talk. Let me see. What is your handle? Omnometry. Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in and for giving me your feedback. And I totally thrive on your feedback. This show really needs you guys, needs you and everybody else that shows up in here to challenge me, to pose questions, to steer things and go whatever direction you want to go. Because ultimately, yeah, I'm here kind of riffing on ideas and stuff, and I'm here giving transmissions because I have a certain level of experience in this kind of field. And sure, I'm here to give you information. That's part of it, but that's not the whole thing. The whole thing is really just there's that, and then there's just the whole community level, and posing questions and comments and even challenging me so that we can pull things out, figure things out in real time. And so I totally depend on you guys. So I know Sarah understands this. She liked it. I know she understands this completely because she is another sacred life artist. And yeah, I really do feel like it is. I feel very, very good when I think about carrying on Melissa's mission and her consciousness and everything that has to do with the artist and the spiritual artist or the sacred artist, whatever we're going to call it, and even living in the movie is coming from Melissa. And she really is the, creatrix of this. And so, and in our time together, it was, we were limited in the amount of it was just, everything has its timeline, and everything comes in due time. And we were in a world of creation and really putting all this kind of stuff together. And now it's been put together. So now it's another phase of sharing it with people and finding the kinds of people to share this with. And it's really going back to the Casa de Luz, to the Thought House idea from the beginning of this show. If anybody came in late and you want to hear about this local place that I've been working at as a volunteer, go back and watch that part. But because it's so nourishing and so amazing to know that there is actually, that we can create physical spaces where people who think like us can meet in the world, in the physical world. So one of the things we're doing with this Singularity Thought House is we're making it work. I'm doing everything I can to help the curator to make this work on a volunteer and donation basis and keep the lights on. And to turn this in, I mean, it's already working. It's already a magic place, and it's been open for 4 months. And I'm doing everything I can to make this thing a success, so that we can then take the model that we have and give it to other people, so that other people can do it too. It does take a certain kind of consciousness, though. We're a good team. Me and Wyo, we're a good team. And there's other people. It's not just me and him. There's other people. There's a core group of us, though, and certain people come into the fold, and we're like, yeah, that person, that's you're one of us. You're another sacred life artist. You understand what this is all about, and another alchemist, and you understand what this is all about. And so it's an amazing thing, and it feels good to know that even though we are a small minority of the population of the planet, there's still plenty of us. And I feel like it was Melissa knows it was her job, and now I'm continuing on that to basically kind of frame it, contextualize it, talk about it, and mirror it back to people, because this is something that isn't in the culture very much. And even when you go to the philosophers, and you go to the Jordan Petersons, and you go to the Bernardo Kastrups, and you go to these people who are all these heady people, they're still not quite fully living it like we are. And then you got all kinds of artists and shamanic people and stuff, but they don't really map it. They don't really talk about it. So this is a needed thing, and so this is like our niche. And now Melissa's not here, so I got to continue it on. So it's good to know that we can do it online. If you guys know other people that resonate with this kind of stuff, with this way of living and way of being, send them over. And I'll keep you up to date on what's going on with the Singularity Thought House, and we'll always keep going. Oh, you've been looking at our stuff, yeah. Do you want to tell me what your name is? What's your name? Because I like to know what the names of the people are who use these handles. See, Theo's got his name in his handle. Dana's got her name in her handle. Not everybody does, though. I am her eminence. I think that's Mary. And I like to know people's names if I can get them. It's better for me. But it doesn't matter if you don't want to do that. And then I write them down. I have a little note where I keep everybody's names and their handles in this note. Okay, everybody. Thank you all. And if you want to look at the paper, the Shaman and the Sacred Life Artist, go to shadowtechalchemy.com, go to the papers link, and it's there. And I hope you guys have a great week. And I will see you next week.